Hey everybody, this is the Longhorn Confidential for Tuesday, November 18th. I'm Danny Davis, the American-Statesman, joined by the fellas, Cedric Golden, Thomas Jones, David Eckert. Let's talk some football, even though I'm sure some of you Texas fans may not want to.
Is this still football season, Daniel?
There's still at least 2 weeks in the football season, but
Okay, just
let's
checking.
let's
Just
let's
checking.
Always football season, win or lose.
well, we're going to talk about the loss. Texas, we're talking to y'all a couple days after Texas went down to Athens, lost 35-10 to the Georgia Bulldogs, number 5 Georgia Bulldogs. We will find out in a couple hours exactly how costly this loss is. Maybe by the time y'all are listening or watching this on YouTube, you will already know. But Texas was ranked 10th last week. If we had any indication by the AP of the Coaches Poll, they're probably going to be about 17th to 18th in these new CFP rankings. TJ, you weren't on this pod a couple weeks ago, but David, and I all kind of argued a little bit. Hey, could a 3-loss Texas team still make the playoffs? Because that was definitely a topic of conversation. Set said no. Me and Eck argued yes. But that was also before Texas lost by 25 points on the road. So, Eck, we'll start with you since you were one of the yeses. I'm going to throw you under the bus first. Same question a couple weeks later. Can a 3-loss Texas team make the playoffs, or are we just playing for a bowl game for these next couple weeks?
Not without an extreme degree of shenanigans. And maybe that's a cop-out answer. You never want to say never in college football because stuff just happens, right? But it's extremely unlikely to me that given the showing that they just had, that they cracked the college football playoff. I think when we were talking about a 3-loss Texas getting in, that was kind of under the assumption that they'd go to Athens and be competitive. And that was a bad assumption because they got their butts kicked. And I don't see any reason. If I'm a committee member, this team has not shown me anything that's going to say I need to fight to include them in this 12-team field. I don't see it.
EJ, you weren't involved in that conversation last week. The same question that we're going to pose to you, so you can act like you knew the answer all along. Can a 3-loss Texas team, and that assumes that they win their last 2 games, make the playoff?
I'm going to play devil's advocate and say yes for a couple of reasons. One, the 3 losses, to David's point, I think the 25-point loss at Georgia, I think the margin of defeat matters more than the 3 losses themselves, because you did lose at number 1 Ohio State by a touchdown. That's honestly, you shouldn't be punished for that from a committee standpoint. Should you be punished for a 25-point loss? Yes. But if they win out, they beat A&M, who's going to be undefeated. And as Sark pointed out Monday, and I double-checked this last night, the last team to beat 3 teams in the regular season that were ranked in the top 10 when they beat them was LSU in 2019 with Joe Burrow in the national championship team. And Texas has beaten Oklahoma, I think it was 5 when they played them. They beat Vanderbilt, number 9 or whatever they were, number 10. And then they were beating an undefeated A&M team. So does that give them an argument? Yeah, I don't think they would make it, but they got a little argument if some other things happen that gives them a little room.
Brad, your thoughts?
If I was wearing a collar, I'd pop it. But no, I'm sticking with my prediction. It just doesn't explain away how you could lose to Florida. It just doesn't explain that away. If they beat Florida, the conversation today is so much different. The conversation today is, oh yeah. They can be 1-2 against. 1-1 against A&M and Georgia, and still get in, because then they don't have that loss to Florida, which is 3-7, and they also beat 2 very bad SEC teams in Kentucky and Mississippi State, who may not even get into a bowl game. Neither one of those teams qualified yet.
In overtime.
So credit for them for showing some fight, some resiliency to get back and win those games. But they just don't seem like a top 12 team to me. Even if they beat Aggie, and they might, and I may pick them to beat Aggie. The Aggie I saw in the first half against South Carolina could be beaten. And if that happens again, Texas is better than South Carolina. Texas can beat Aggie. But I don't know that it would still be enough. I could see them finishing 13 or 14 and people going, oh man, we barely lost. No, it was lost in Gainesville. That's where it all went south. And I think that that's going to be the game that costs them a chance to be in the CFP.
If they finish 12, the amount of screaming about that G5 bid that we're going to have to experience, I'm not looking forward to that.
Good copy. Get ready. Get ready, Eck. Good copy.
That's the thing, though. It's not, Texas doesn't have to be a top team. They have to be a top 10 team. They have to get in the top 10 if they're going to make that cut, because the ACC team is probably not going to be top 10, and that G5 team definitely is not. I think they would just have to blow away the committee with the way they look over these next 2 weeks. They'd have to kill Arkansas, which I don't think any of us think they're going to do. I think most of us may pick them to beat Arkansas, but I don't think anyone thinks they're going to, murder the Razorbacks, who have been playing pretty well, losing, but playing pretty well. And then they'd have to just murder A&M, which, as we learned last week, those Aggies are tough to kill this year. If they can go back from 30-3 like against South Carolina, I'm not sure Texas is posting a 30-point win, but they'd have to really impress and then hope that a lot of stuff happens ahead of them. I mean, these teams ahead of them, they've beaten Vanderbilt, they've beaten Oklahoma, so maybe you have an argument head-to-head there. Utah and BYU, which will both be ranked ahead of Texas this week, both have a really bad loss to Texas Tech on their resume, a 20-point loss too. So maybe you can be like, well, Georgia's better than Texas Tech or something like that. But they would just have to look very impressive and maybe have some shenanigans with the committee in order to make it. And I just don't see that happening. Never say never, as X says, but we're pretty close to saying never. And they may not even, run the table. I mean, I think that A&M game, I think those Aggies are going to take delight in coming into Austin and, possibly, putting an exclamation point on this Texas season while they march towards an undefeated regular season. But we'll talk about that game next week. Let's talk a little bit about Monday. Steve Sarkisian, when he met with the media, fielded a question from our old friend Kirk Bowles and did not like the way he was praised.
He is old. Yes, old.
Kirk mentioned, hey, why is this team been kind of underwhelming this season? And Steve, kind of shot back, according to who, which was silly because media voted them number one in the preseason. The coaches voted them number one in the preseason. And I would assume that no one in that locker room expected Texas to be 7-3 this season. So they have underwhelmed to everyone. But if Steve has a problem with that word, we'll go around the room. Thomas, we'll start with you. We all get paid to write. What is a word that you'd use to describe Texas this season, assuming we can't use underwhelmed?
Did Kirk say underwhelmed or underachieving?
Underachieved.
Okay. What is a word? Wow, that's a good question. If I can't use underachieving, and I mean, by all accounts it is, I would say humbling. I think the amount of talent that Texas lost to the NFL over the last couple of drafts, there was an assumption that they were just going to replace that talent by a lot of people, including the media, who did vote on number one. And I think that was the wrong assumption. I think, to paraphrase Michael Taft after the Kentucky game, it's hard to win. And players like 4 NFL linemen that were on last year's team, they don't just pop up every recruiting class. They don't. And I think a lot of people thought Sark had something similar to what Nick Saban had at Bama or what Kirby had at Georgia, 5 years ago, where you're just plugging in NFL players year after year. And that's not the case this year. And the record reflects that. So I would pick humbling.
Is your word?
Me?
Yep.
Unimpressive. Even the wins, the Mississippi State win, unimpressive. The comeback, props to Ryan Niblett for getting them back in that game, was impressive. Overall, the whole season unimpressive. They turned Kentucky into that stadium into the biggest escape room in America. 16-13, unimpressive. 7 points against Ohio State. I don't care who you're playing in America. Unimpressive. If you give up 14 points, you're supposed to win. So I like what Thomas said. They've lost a lot of talent, and only Saban and Kirby know what it's like to stay winning double-digit seasons after 12 and 13 guys leaving every year. Those guys are special coaches. Sark still needs to break through. to become a special coach. He's got to figure out how to beat Kirby Smart, who sees him coming from a mile away. He's onside kicking. He punked you in Athens, and he texted you from Mississippi State just to let you know, hey, I'm in your head, baby. And he's going to have to do something about that. And even though they're not playing them next year, even if Texas gets back, Kirby's probably going to be waiting in the championship game. So he's a guy that never goes away. So I would say unimpressive.
Heck, what are you pulling out of the dictionary / the thesaurus?
I'm going with a noun. I'm going misevaluation. And
Nice, Eck.
I think that goes in two different directions. I think Texas misevaluated its talent at a couple of key places and did not pursue
about
talent. Well,
O-line.
yeah, O-line. And I mean, look, if you're Texas and you go out in the offseason and you get 3 stud offensive linemen and you dish out a bunch of money in the transfer portal, how many of your problems does that solve? It might be all of them. I mean, I think they misevaluated what they have in the secondary with Jade Barron and Andrew McCuba no longer there because that unit has been stinky. And I think the media misevaluated a few key portions of this team. I think Arch, I mean, to be fair to him, he's been better. He has been the furthest thing from the problem with these guys, but certainly he's not the second coming, right? Or at least isn't yet. I think we misevaluated their weapons. I think their weapons are just okay for the type of team that they're trying to be. I think we misevaluated them at tight end. They don't have a difference maker there. I think a lot of people, both inside the Texas building and outside the Texas building, were really wrong about a lot of their talent. So misevaluation would be the word I would use.
What miserable. I mean, is anybody having fun? If you're a Texas fan, are you having fun rooting for this team? No, you're not. If you're a Texas media member, have you had fun covering this team? Did you have fun watching this team lose a game it should have won at Florida? Did you have fun driving back to Kentucky after getting lectured by Michael Taft in an overtime game, then having to jump in your car and drive 2 hours to Cincinnati? Did we have fun in driving back and forth from Jackson to Mississippi State just to watch a team that we had to pretty much delete every single thing we wrote on our stories because this team's winning, now they're losing, their season's over, then they come back and win? I mean, this just hasn't. If you're Steve Sarkisian, you had fun, coaching a team that's underwhelmed, having to, defend some of your actions, having to defend whether or not you should be play calling, having to defend all these job rumors that are floating about. Is anyone over there just actually having fun? This was a season that a lot of people had a lot of expectations across the board. Was supposed to start with this marquee game at Ohio State that, as you mentioned, said was 14-7. It wasn't like this was some classic game that, we're going to remember for the rest of our lives. Aside from maybe the Oklahoma game, if you're a Texas fan, has been fun watching A&M, have the season they're having. Texas Tech had the season they're having. North Texas had the season that they're having. Has this been fun?
Preach, boy, preach.
For anyone, I just don't, and no one cares whether or not we're having fun over at the Statesman, but I just can't imagine many people sitting at home watching this and stewing behind their computers has had a lot of fun this season. I think that's probably across the board, whether you're a player having to deal with the critiques and, not living up to expectations or, watching at home. So I will go with miserable for my word. But
and as we know, some of these guys, when we talk to them at Monday press conferences, they are not having fun at all.
Word of advice: don't mention any of this conversation to the Arkansas media. That's gonna be in DKR Saturday. Compared to them, we're at Disney World.
Perspective is always good. That is
they
true.
did not come into the season expecting anything. They're probably enjoying covering a coaching change and having some different stuff. They didn't expect anything in Fayetteville. I'd imagine Arkansas fans probably would switch places with Texas fans and not be as miserable as it would not be the other way around. But let's go back to that word, underachieved. Steve Sarkisian's favorite word. When I say underachieved, when we think about this Texas football team, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Said, we'll start with you.
I'm gonna say the coaching staff underachieved this year. The head coach has had some dubious play calls that have plagued him in big games over the years. The quarterback wasn't the second coming to steal a line from Eck. And I think the defensive Longhorns, who have been solid, have definitely taken a step back. Watching them just give up cushion to Georgia receivers. Gunnar Stockton is an okay quarterback. He ain't all SEC. He's not all American. But they made Gunnar Stockton look like Joe Montana. And so they used to bring out the worst in quarterbacks, and now they're bringing out the best. And for two straight years, Gunnar Stockton has hurt them. So I think the coaching staff, above all else, and that includes the recruiting part of it, has underachieved this year.
We'll just go down because I was going to say the exact same thing, and I pretty much agree with everything you said. I mean, I'll give, maybe PK a little bit of the pass because at points this season, this defense has looked pretty well, but offensively across the board, whether you want to go with a new coach like Chad Scott in that running back room, Chris Jackson in the receiving room, March's development's been all right, but there's a reason why the criticisms about Steve's play calling didn't come out of nowhere. There's reasons to criticize that play calling. Kyle Flood, you're not the offensive coordinator. Your job is to coach up this offensive line, and they misevaluated whether or not they needed transfer linemen, or if they didn't take those, they failed to coach up the guys they had. Jeff Banks has got pumped by Georgia 2 straight years in special teams. Across the board, like I just think this coaching staff, which gets paid a lot of money, has just underachieved. They are paid to be a championship staff, and they have not performed that way this season. So that I would agree with Seth on the coaching part. Thomas, what comes to mind when I say underachieved?
We're similar to y'all, but I think specifically, the running game. Sark has been such an effective offense coordinator over the years, and he has been an effective play caller. Whether fans are pissed at him right now or not, he has a record of creating a balanced offense, running the ball, and they just can't run the ball this year. And it's probably one of the only times in Sark's career they just can't get any production on the ground. And from a purely offensive standpoint, it's underachieving, and it's head scratching, to be honest.
I'm going to go with offensive design, and I guess that kind of dovetails with play calling, but Texas is still not good enough in the red zone. They're still not good enough on third down. They're not using their dual threat quarterback to run the ball. There's a collection of things in the margins that it just are not going right. And when you're not this machine that just eats everything in front of it like you were last year, you need those things in the margins to go right. And it's just not happening. And so I just think there's a level of crispness, and there's a level of strategy that can be used to cover up some of these cracks, or maybe craps is more appropriate. That's not happening. I've been really underwhelmed by what they've done on offense, especially in situational football.
Before we get out of here, let's talk about the Arkansas game a little bit, but not really, because that's not what this question is really about. But Arkansas is coming to town this weekend, 2:30 kick over at DKR, ABC if you're watching back home. For the season, or since Texas got to the SEC, it's been kind of a storyline that Texas now gets to play 3 rivals every year. You have A&M, you have Oklahoma, you have Arkansas. Now, the Arkansas rivalry, unless you are of a certain age, probably does not hit the same way as the other ones, just because Texas and Arkansas really haven't played regularly since the 90s when Arkansas left the Southwest Conference. So we know Oklahoma and Texas A&M are Texas's 2 biggest rivals. You can quibble about the order there. But do you consider Arkansas to be that third rival? Seth, we'll start with you. Or is there another team that you kind of think should be that third rival from Texas, whether it's from the old Big 12 days or this new SEC run that Texas is on?
Well, right now it's not a rivalry, but if I'm Texas, I'm looking no further than Athens, Georgia. That's got to be the team that you've got to get after. That's your rival. They may not think you're their rival because they're not worried about you right now. But if I'm Sarkisian, I've got a big old poster of Kirby Smart in my office, and that's my dartboard. That's the man that you got to take down if you want to win at Texas. I'm not worried about Arkansas. They're in a rebuild. We know the Aggies have arrived, and we know the Sooners are never going to be bad 2 years in a row. But if you're really championship goal oriented, it's Georgia and nobody else. You've got to figure out how to beat Kirby Smart, or you might not be coaching here in the near future, because that's just what it is. $11 million a year is $11 million a year. And sooner or later, they're going to get tired of getting punked by Georgia. I mean, what did they go? They went 31 yards rushing, 29 yards rushing, and 23 yards rushing. And that's getting punked. That's getting punked. And that's the SEC, where if you don't run the football, you're going to get run out of town. So it's Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs right now.
Who would you pick for that third rivalry slot for this Texas team?
I'm going to go with Steve Sarkisian against the officials who referee the Georgia games, because clearly he's not happy with what's going on there.
I love that.
He might need to clap his way to a timeout before he gets fined the next time he has a press conference. But yeah, I think Georgia's the answer. I mean, you guys have more. If we're projecting into the future, Georgia's the answer, right? If you're looking back at the Big 12, you guys can do that better than I can, with me kind of being the newbie here. I think externally, the games that I remember watching growing up were Texas Tech. Like I remember Michael Crabtree, but yeah, I'm not the foremost expert on the history, I suppose.
EJ?
Yeah, as someone who grew up in Texas, it's Tech, and Georgia's not a rivalry. Georgia beats Texas. That's not a rivalry. It's Tech in football, in basketball, in baseball, heck, in softball, in any sport. The people in Tech, and I say this, and I have some good Tech friends, and bless their hearts. Boy, there's a lot of anger on the South Plains for some reason, always directed at Texas and even A&M. I don't know if it's because a lot of the students couldn't get into Texas or A&M, but there's some vitriol out there, man.
They live in Lubbock. I mean, wouldn't you be mad if you lived in Lubbock?
I literally got a text from. I'm gonna get a text from one of my friends that went to Tech, but. That is a fierce rivalry, and I hope at some point the two football teams play each other again. A couple of weeks ago when they're projecting, well, if Texas beats Georgia and A&M, maybe they'll go to Lubbock for a first-round game. Not going to happen, but man, that would have been fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Tech, if we're talking rivalries, and it's not even close for anybody else.
We respect the fact that Tech is just like, whatever. We're spending money. We're going to be competitive in multiple spaces, whether it's football, whether it's softball, as TJ saw this past June with at the college.
Good for Tech. Yep.
I do respect that. I don't really have a better answer than Tech. I do wish Texas would find a better ways to play Baylor more in all sports, just because that is right down the road. It's really easy. It's really manageable. I thought it was unacceptable that the women's teams did not play last year at all. But I think since those two schools are, and it just doesn't have to be football, I would like to see Texas and Baylor playing a little bit more. It's really easy and really manageable to do. But that's just my opinion. Probably doesn't have the exact vitriol of a Texas Tech or Georgia, or definitely not in Arkansas. But I would love to see the Bears on more schedules. But we all cannot be the University of Montana and Montana State, which is the best rivalry, and is happening this Saturday at 1 p.m., which is a little bit before 2:30 kickoff over on campus.
Nobody cares. No one cares about that.
People definitely care. Just because
They're not watching this podcast.
Just because y'all ignoramuses don't know anything about college football. You guys, y'all could kick rocks. I wrote this podcast. I'm going to talk about it. But that 2:30 kickoff over at DKR. If you see me wandering around campus in a bad news because Montana's down, but we'll see you over at DKR. Be sure to check out statesman.com throughout the week. We'll have plenty of content leading up to the Arkansas game, which is also the ABC televised game. On Saturday. On Second Thought podcast drops on Thursday. Said, what are you and Kirk talking about this week? I'm sure, maybe that underachieved word may pop up a time or two on that podcast.
I think the U word will pop up early in that podcast, and we're going to be joined by a former Longhorn All-American, Rod Babers, a local media personality who's probably the most prepared man in sports media as far as what's going on the field. He's going to dissect what happened in Georgia and what needs to happen in these next 2 weeks to hopefully get the Longhorns to the CFP.
Yeah, check that out on Thursday. Be sure to check out Ced's Corners, the Ced's weekly newsletter, which drops every Tuesday. My daily Texas sports newsletter. You can sign up for that as well on statesman.com. Be sure to check out a lot of other work. Our people in our news department are working their butts off, chase all these news across the state. Tony Catalina is doing a great job at Texas A&M. He's running a live blog today because Montana is playing Texas A&M down in College Station in men's basketball. So check that out. Our high school reporters, they're doing a great job with the high school playoffs. It seemed like we had a bunch of crazy last-second games. Sarah Diggins was shooting all that stuff visually, the Anderson game, the Vandergrift game. So lots of stuff on statesman.com. We appreciate you all watching us on YouTube, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you over at DKR on Saturday. Go Grizz, beat the Cats.